Jessica was a woman who carried with her the weight of many dreams. From a young age, she knew that the path would not be easy. He grew up in a modest community, where rarely did anyone follow a path different from what life dictated. Low-paying jobs, little or no social mobility, and prejudice rooted in every corner. But Jessica was different. She had an intelligence and willpower that few could match, and she knew that her life could be so much more than the statistics suggested. Having graduated in law from one of the most renowned public universities, Jessica excelled in all subjects. His interest in law was genuine. She saw law as a powerful tool for social transformation, a means to correct injustices and give voice to the silenced. When she finished college, her teachers and classmates were sure she would pursue a successful career. However, the world outside the academy was cruel and unforgiving, especially for a black woman like her. Don't miss Jessica's incredible journey of overcoming. Subscribe to the channel now to follow this inspiring story and many others. At first, Jessica believed that her resume would be enough to open doors. He had everything he needed: a good education, letters of recommendation, and an unshakable passion for law. But job interviews quickly became a succession of frustrations. In many offices, she was not even welcomed for a personal conversation. When he got an interview, the looks of disdain and distant treatment were evident. Jessica soon realized that in the corporate world, her academic merits would not protect her from prejudice. It was a harsh reality, but she wasn't willing to give up. It was during one of these attempts to enter the job market that Jessica came across an opportunity at one of the biggest law firms in the city. It wasn't the job of his dreams, but it was a chance to get into the environment he craved. The position? Cleaner. To many, this might seem like a defeat, but Jessica saw beyond it. I knew this would be an opportunity to closely observe how the firm works, understand the internal dynamics, and, perhaps, find an opening to show its value. And that's how he started working. Dressed in her cleaning uniform, she cleaned the rooms where lawyers discussed complex cases, organized the tables full of legal documents, and silently paid attention to everything. Every conversation, every technical word, every mistake that went unnoticed by the younger interns. Jessica absorbed it all like a sponge. However, it wasn't long before she began to face the typical challenges of being a black woman in an underappreciated position. The lawyers barely noticed his presence. Some made a point of ignoring her completely, as if she were just part of the furniture. Others, however, took advantage of her position of power to ridicule her. Sarcastic comments about unattainable dreams and racist jokes about the place of people like her were common in the firm's hallways. Dr. Lewis, the company's CEO, was the ultimate example of this elitist and prejudiced mentality. To him, Jessica was nothing more than a cleaning lady. He observed her with disdain, never called her by name, and whenever he could, he made a point of reminding her that there was an unbreakable hierarchy within there. Even when Jessica tried to suggest small corrections or ideas, always politely and discreetly, he silenced her with a simple wave of the hand or a look of contempt. But Jessica, far from being intimidated by this reality, grew stronger every day. He knew he couldn't let himself be put off by insults or prejudice. He kept his posture straight, his gaze steady, and within himself, he harbored a certainty. His moment would come. And while Jessica faced this hostile environment, she continued to dedicate herself to law. At the end of each shift, after cleaning the last tables and organizing the last papers, she would go home and spend hours studying. I revisited concepts learned at university, read new articles, and followed the latest court decisions. His focus was unwavering. For her, cleaning was just a temporary phase, a stepping stone to something bigger. And it's at this point that the question arises: how many times have we felt like Jessica, undervalued, devalued, judged by our appearance or social position? Perhaps you have also faced situations where your true potential was ignored. If so, this story is for you. Jessica knew that despite the challenges, she was in the right place. She was learning more than anyone could imagine. And above all, he was preparing. Every day at that company was an opportunity to grow, observe, and become stronger. His journey of overcoming was just beginning. But would you, in Jessica's place, have the same patience? Would you continue fighting against prejudice and adversity, or would you give up? Comment below and share your experiences. The company environment was oppressive for Jessica. In addition to routine cleaning tasks, she faced the veiled, and sometimes explicit, prejudice of her coworkers on a daily basis. The lawyers, with their expensive suits and arrogant speeches, saw Jessica as just an invisible part of the machine that kept the office running. Few even knew her name, and for many, she was nothing more than the cleaning lady. Dr. Lewis, the company's CEO, was the embodiment of this elitism. A middle-aged man, soft-spoken but with a biting coldness. For him, the company was a reflection of his own personal success. And in her world, people like Jessica, black and in subordinate positions, had no value. He treated her with indifference, if not openly ridiculing her. Jessica, however, was undeterred. I knew that, regardless of what others thought, she had something that no one there could take away. Her knowledge and passion for law. And it was precisely this passion that began to change his trajectory. One day, while cleaning one of the meeting rooms after a long discussion about an important court case, Jessica noticed that something was wrong with the documents the lawyers had left behind. Even without complete access to the case, just with the fragments of information she had heard during the conversations, she understood that a serious mistake was about to be made. Without hesitation, Jessica made a decision that could change everything. She knew she could be ignored, or worse, fired for daring to question the lawyers. But she also knew she couldn't let it go. He waited for the lawyer responsible for the case to return to the room and politely drew his attention to the error. He looked at her with surprise and, initially, suspicion. Who was she to understand such a complex process? But when he checked the documents, he realized that Jessica was right. A crucial error had gone unnoticed, and its correction could save the case. This was the first time that someone within the company began to see Jessica in a different light. The lawyer, impressed by his knowledge, began to discreetly seek his help. She was still the cleaning lady for everyone, but behind the scenes, she was beginning to act in a much more significant way. Whenever a technical detail or a legal issue arose, he consulted her, and Jessica, with her characteristic humility, offered her help without ever demanding recognition. However, over time, Jessica's success could no longer be hidden. Other lawyers began to notice his competence, and the discomfort began to spread. It was not acceptable for many that a black woman, without status within the company, had so much skill. Jessica was a threat to the status quo, and while she gained allies, she also collected enemies. Dr. Lewis, in particular, began to see Jessica in a different light, and not in a positive way. He felt uncomfortable with the fact that a simple cleaning lady was beginning to be praised by high-level lawyers. For him, this was unacceptable. How could someone outside his circle, without the same privilege and elitist education, have such prominence? And that's how he decided to act. The environment began to become increasingly hostile towards Jessica. Dr. Lewis, in his private meetings with lawyers, made a point of reinforcing the idea that the company was a space for qualified professionals and that minor positions should remain behind the scenes. He didn't mention Jessica directly, but the message was clear. Jessica, however, maintained her firm stance. Did you know that Dr. Lewis was powerful? But she also knew she wasn't alone. She had important allies within the company, and more than that, she had confidence in herself. And then came the big case that would change everything. A multimillion-dollar client, involved in a complicated legal dispute, fully trusted the company's team to defend him. However, the main lawyer, responsible for the entire strategy, was removed for health reasons. Chaos ensued. Nobody knew what to do. Dr. Lewis, visibly nervous, had no plan B. It was the kind of situation where everything could fall apart, and, along with the case, so could the company's reputation. Jessica watched everything from a distance, without interfering, until, in a moment of desperation, the lawyer she had been secretly working with suggested that Jessica be heard. Dr. Lewis, of course, thought the idea was absurd. A cleaning lady solving the company's most important case. Ridiculous, he thought. But the circumstances were desperate, and he reluctantly allowed Jessica to speak out. And that's when Jessica showed her true worth. With a confidence that no one expected, she presented a clear and objective solution to the case. His suggestions were so precise that the lawyers present were speechless. Dr. Lewis, of course, tried to downplay his contribution, but it was too late. Jessica had proven herself. That was the key turning point. Jessica was no longer just a cleaning lady who understood law. Now, she was seen as a competent professional, worthy of respect. And Dr. Lewis, realizing that his power was threatened, began to devise plans to remove her once and for all. You think Jessica should have given up? Would it have been? Jessica continued to grow within the company, albeit unofficially. Even if they hadn't formalized their new role, their influence was undeniable. Many of the lawyers were already turning to her for advice, and her presence began to be noticed not only by her colleagues, but also by her clients. To most, she was still the cleaning lady, but those who really paid attention knew there was something very special about Jessica. Dr. Lewis, however, did not see the situation the same way. To him, Jessica was an affront. His rise, even if discreet, was unacceptable. How could he allow a low-ranking employee, especially a black woman, to steal the spotlight? For him, the idea of a cleaning lady standing out within his firm was the height of absurdity. He needed to act, and quickly. It was then that Jessica faced her biggest challenge. The company's big client, involved in the case it had helped save, was about to close a billion-dollar contract. Everyone in the company was on high alert. The success of this contract would guarantee the firm's financial stability for the next few years, and any mistake could be fatal. Dr. Lewis, in his attempt to regain control, decided that he would be responsible for leading the final negotiations. Jessica, of course, knew something was wrong. Behind the scenes, she had worked tirelessly to ensure every detail of the contract was correct. But when it came time to sign, she realized that an important clause had been omitted, a clause that could cost the company millions, and that would put the client in an extremely vulnerable position. Jessica, knowing the error was serious, tried to alert Dr. Lewis. In a tense meeting, she pointed out the flaw and suggested a solution. But, as expected, he ignored her. For him, the idea of a cleaning lady correcting his work was inconceivable. With an impatient gesture, he dismissed her from the room, saying that real professionals would handle this. Jessica was silent, but inside her something changed. She knew that if Dr. Lewis went ahead with this negotiation without correcting the error, the company would be at risk. And worse, she knew that if that happened, her career, and that of many other employees, would be ruined. Determined not to allow this to happen, she sought out the allies she had gained over time. With the help of some influential lawyers within the company, Jessica came up with a plan. They would correct the error, but they would do so in a way that protected the company and exposed Dr. Lewis. She knew it would be risky, but she also knew it was the right thing to do. By this point, Jessica had already gained something that Dr. Lewis could never take from her: the respect of her colleagues. Even though she didn't have a formal position yet, she had the support she needed to move forward. On the day of signing the contract, Jessica was ready. Dr. Lewis, confident and arrogant, began to conduct the negotiations. But at the crucial moment, one of the lawyers intervened, pointing out the flaw that Jessica had identified. The room fell silent. Dr. Lewis tried to argue, but the truth was clear. He had made a serious mistake, and Jessica had corrected him. At that moment, Dr. Lewis broke down. Jessica, instead of publicly humiliating him, remained silent. She knew that her victory did not depend on exposing him, but on proving that his value went beyond any position or title. But Dr. Lewis, unable to deal with the defeat, did something no one expected. He fired Jessica in front of everyone. The room was in shock. Many of the lawyers present knew that Jessica was indispensable, and that her dismissal would be a blow to the firm. But Dr. Lewis, driven by pride and prejudice, was determined to drive her away once and for all. For him, a cleaning lady should never have so much power. Jessica, however, was prepared for this moment. During the previous months, with the help of some strategic allies, she had acquired a significant amount of shares in the company. When Dr. Lewis announced her resignation, she remained calm and, with a discreet smile, revealed the truth. She was now one of the firm's largest shareholders. The reaction was immediate. Dr. Lewis was speechless. The lawyers, initially shocked, began to applaud Jessica. She, who had been underestimated for so long, was now in control. Dr. Lewis, humiliated and with no way out, was forced to leave the company he valued so much. Jessica, in turn, took on a leadership role, and more than that, transformed the firm's culture. Under his direction, the company began to value diversity, inclusion, and, above all, merit. Jessica's story is a narrative of overcoming, courage, and social justice. From the beginning, she knew the path would be difficult. Being a black woman, in a society that still carries so many prejudices, would be a challenge in itself. But Jessica didn't let it get her down. She knew that her value went beyond what others could see and, with patience and determination, she earned the respect and admiration of everyone around her. His journey at the law firm was marked by many ups and downs. At first, she was just the cleaning lady, invisible to most employees and constantly the target of racist jokes and comments. But instead of letting that define her, Jessica used that invisibility to her advantage. She observed, learned, and little by little, built her own trajectory within the firm. The turning point in her story was the moment she decided she would no longer stay on the sidelines. By correcting a lawyer's error, she showed that her knowledge and skill were as valuable as that of any other professional there. And when she was recognized for this, she began to gain allies who helped her grow. However, Jessica's true transformation came with her direct confrontation with Dr. Lewis. He, who had always underestimated and ridiculed her, was taken by surprise when Jessica revealed her position as a shareholder in the company. The symbolic dismissal she meted out to him was a moment of poetic justice. Dr. Lewis, the man who always believed that power and privilege were enough to maintain his status, was defeated by someone he considered insignificant. But Jessica's story isn't just about revenge. It's about the power of persistence, belief in yourself, and, above all, social justice. Jessica didn't just want revenge on Dr. Lewis. She wanted to change the system, and that's exactly what he did. Under his leadership, the firm underwent a radical transformation. The work environment, previously marked by elitism and prejudice, became an inclusive space, where diversity was valued. Jessica implemented policies that guaranteed equal opportunities for everyone, regardless of their color, gender, or social status. She knew that talent and skill were not limited to a specific group of people, and she wanted to ensure that no one else would go through the humiliation she faced. But perhaps the biggest lesson Jessica left was about the importance of sticking to your principles. At no point did she let prejudice or discrimination define her. Even when she was ridiculed and underestimated, she knew her value was far greater than others could imagine. And, over time, she was proven right. His story spread beyond the company walls. Soon, Jessica became an inspiration to many other women, especially black women, who saw her as an example of strength and resilience. She began to be invited to speak at events and conferences on diversity and inclusion, sharing her journey and ideas on how to build fairer and more equitable work environments. And you, what did you learn from Jessica's story? Would we have the same patience and determination in a similar situation? Prejudice and discrimination often seem like insurmountable obstacles, but Jessica's story shows us that, with courage and perseverance, it is possible to overcome them. Each of us has the potential to make a difference, whether in our workplaces, in our communities, or in our personal lives. Just believe in our worth and never give up fighting for what is right. So, if you felt inspired by this story, help us spread this message. Like, share, and discuss this video with your friends and colleagues. Together, We can make a difference and build a world where everyone has the opportunity to show their true potential.